Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Dear Andrew Parker, I have put out an appeal to Dr. Bruno Karl, head of the BND, requesting a cease and desist, and I'm also putting out a public request for cease and desist to you and your organization MI5. I have now been harassed for over half a decade, including by your organization. My harassment started attending a High Court case in London, as you know, in 2011. I have watched your agents harass me continuously for a year in Britain. I have learned what street theatre is. I have mapped out hand signs partially, the organized stalking network of the National Surveillance System. I have also mapped out how these old people were, I would say, sexually arousing themselves in my stalking in the street theatre that they put on. And I have watched the workings of MI5 for over a year, close up. I've moved to Germany. My harassment followed me seamlessly and showed me how closely you interface with German intelligence, and subsequently when I moved to Switzerland, my harassment followed me. In Germany, I also started being overtly targeted with electromagnetic weapons. I was also attacked with them when I returned to the UK. I was demonstratively stalked and shot into the neck with directed energy weapons when I was actually sitting in the Radcliffe Science Library in Oxford. Your agents subsequently followed me back to London on the train, making sure that I understood that they were the people who attacked me, and that they were also following me back from Oxford to London. By the time I attended the court case of Philip Kerr versus MI5, the actual harassment that Philip Kerr complained about sounded extremely familiar. Everything that he complained about, maybe with the exception of the kidnapping and drugging that he experienced, I had experienced myself. In my case, it wasn't finches and ravens that were trained to harass me, but it was dogs. And apart from these small details, I could follow and I could see everything that Philip Kerr complained about with regards to your organization, one-to-one mapped to the harassment I had experienced. Now, after half a decade, and now after having been tortured specifically in a targeted demonstrative fashion for over a year, by your organization in conjunction with British and with the acquiescence of Swiss intelligence, I ask you to cease and desist. I felt that already taking your organization along with MI6 and GCHQ to court at the beginning of 2016 would have been enough of a request to cease and desist. But it seems that your organization, just like German intelligence, is so out of control, so full of hypocrisy and utter disdain for complainants, especially, I would say, female complainants, that you couldn't give a damn. Now I would say that after the death threat I received going to the High Court in May, after surviving an assassination attempt 3 days later, after having been shot in the back of the head with extremely painful microwave pulses immediately after my first hearing at the High Court, I would say that your organization is in deep capture by criminal elements. You have gone rogue. I now ask you publicly to cease and desist. You have attacked me again in a targeted and systematic fashion when I returned to the UK at the end of October to attend the court hearing of Dr. Stephen Frost versus MOD. When I tried to just do what the judge actually asked me to do, which is report these incidents to the police, you actually pulled the strings, I would say, so that the receptionist did not put me through to a police officer. I was not allowed to talk to a police officer. I was not allowed to actually report the crime in a proper fashion. I was sent home, and then several hours later, after I had called to make sure that I don't have to wait up for a police officer any longer, and I was lied at, after all this, I would say, it was you and your agents, put on intimidation theatre by calling out a mental health ambulance as if I needed one after I'd just been on my own, after I'd driven back on the motorway on my own into the night, and after being left alone, and I'd worked and I had called the police station. You actually played out as if I'd needed a mental health ambulance just before midnight. I talked to your officers and I've put the video online, how that entire interaction went down. I have since then requested the crime report. I have already made the crime number public, and I have requested the crime report from Greater Manchester Police, and over several weeks they have refused to actually hand it out to me. I will submit again a request for my crime report, and I will try to follow the system properly as it should be working. If I meet any other resistance like that, I will assume that it's deep capture, and I'll assume that it's deep capture emanating from MI5. By the way, when I asked the whistleblower for advice, the whistleblower's car clerk, about what to do and who might be harassing me, he wholeheartedly agreed that most likely I'm being harassed by MI5 and his, as he put it, his minions in the police and special branch. Dear Andrew Parker, I don't actually want to be mutilated anymore or assassinated by your agents or their so-called minions and enablers. I also have reason to believe that you used electromagnetic weapons and brain interference technologies to attack my family in the UK. I ask you to cease and desist. I ask you to stop harassing me. I am asking you to stop intimidating me, and I'm asking you to stop the death threats and to stop having your agents or one of your many international collaborators attack me. I ask you to stop the attacks against me, and I ask you personally to take care of this matter. I do not believe that any one of your agents would be going solo and randomly assaulting a litigant in a high court case on their own without your authorization. This is why I actually put the blame squarely at your door, Andrew Parker. I blame you for the fact that I was repeatedly shot in the head with electromagnetic weapons in the hotel room straight after my hearing at the High Court. I also put the blame squarely at your door that I received a veiled death threat on the way to the High Court, and that I then subsequently survived an assassination attempt 3 days later in Switzerland. I also put the blame squarely at your door that preparing for my High Court case, I was assaulted so hard with microwave radiation inside my home that I had to flee my home in Switzerland and seek refuge at my parents' house. After 2 weeks in hiding, the first time I left the house, I was irradiated so hard with microwave weapons, they actually burst the capillaries in my arm and I was bruised up. Then, just the night before my third High Court hearing, your agents put on a little spectacle, a little street theatre or pantomime, whereby I was walking just behind St. James's Square, and you had one of your agents cycle towards me in camouflage, head-to-toe camouflage, with a big German flag and a big helmet with green LEDs running up and down. He stopped next to me and said something to me, which fortunately I didn't hear, because I do have a limited capacity for bullshit. But this spectacle spelled out German military mind control, as far as I can tell. And it is precisely what I have been suffering from ever since. Every single time I returned to Germany, already during my High Court case, but especially after, there were targeted attacks to my head. I was tortured by German intelligence so persistently over Christmas that I had to, in my first day back, I had to throw up several times because the microwaving to my head was so intense. I had to flee my home. I also had to spend extended time away from home, and I was attacked in public. The fact that you foresaw this the night before my last hearing at the High Court shows me that you are in on it. And therefore I ask you, along with Dr. Bruno Karl, to cease and desist. And I'm asking you publicly. And I'm also telling you, just like I told Dr. Bruno Karl, that there's now an international group of whistleblowers, and we're all trying to help the many victims, 70% of whom are women. 70% of female victims of any sort of Secret Service undertaking doesn't imply that the original undertaking had anything to do with national security, simply because most terrorists are male. Therefore, collateral damage arising by accident would have to be also mostly male. What is being done to the victims, who as far as I can tell are actually mostly black in the UK, and women, and mostly single women or single moms, what is being done to those women does not even qualify as weapons testing or human experimentation anymore, because for weapons testing you would want to test the weapons on men because soldiers would be the targets, and on human experimentation you would want to have data on both sexes equally. So the fact that also in the UK you've got predominantly female victims means that it's actually a telltale sign of war crimes and also of sexual violence. So, Mr. Parker, the situation that you're in is that your organization, along with other European intelligence agencies, seems to be committing war crimes. And it seems to be using modern technology to allow its own agents to live out sexual violence against defenseless women and children. You are using the most modern, most terrifying, and most debilitating weapons ever devised by man, the most insidious, and you're using them on defenseless women. And this, despite the fact that the actual name above your organization is military intelligence. I do not have to point out to you that attacking defenseless women, mostly from ethnic minorities, has nothing to do with military capabilities and most certainly has got nothing to do with intelligence. And therefore I ask you to cease and desist. Next time I'm in the UK, I shall report every single microwave attack to the police. And next time I do that, I expect that the police be left to do their job properly without interference from London, without interference from your agents from London or local or otherwise. And I would ask you to help me to return your organization to the rule of law and to help the victims. I am desperately trying to help the many, many thousand victims that we know about in the UK who are being tortured inside their own home. Now, for a country that has given us government accountability, this is a disaster. In a sense, I'm shocked as a German citizen to be tortured by the German intelligence agencies. I am shocked, but on some level, I'm also not surprised, simply because the organization that has arisen out of the Gestapo and has recruited agents from the Stasi really probably can't help itself. However, for a country that is essentially renowned for its democracy, it's renowned for government accountability, and in the recent past has given us a lot of government transparency tools, is also famous for freedom of information, and is famous for the fact that the Supreme Court, for example, is being live streamed over the internet. For a country like that, to have an organization quite so backward, quite so psychopathic as MI5 and your sister organization MI6 is a disgrace. Your agents are now publicly complaining online on blogs about the sexual violence against them. They are publicly complaining about murders, mutilation, trauma-based mind control being done to them. I also read that essentially this was the claim of the person who wrote the article, which otherwise I have to say was so psychopathic it was thoroughly credible. The claim of this, what I think is an ex-agent or current agent, was that every single MI5 and MI6 agent who rises to the top actually started out as a sex abuse victim. After what I've read in the newspapers for the entire time, which was over a decade I lived in the UK, I find that credible. And now I'm asking you, Mr. Parker, to get your organization back under control. Maybe for the first time ever in its entire history. Put it under control and make it respect the rule of law and make it respect human rights. And maybe one day, when you manage to do this job, you could maybe get your organization to also actively uphold human rights within the UK. However, what I'm asking you in the first instance is to cease and desist all attacks against me and my family in the UK and abroad. I'm asking you to also get in touch with your foreign collaborating agencies who have done the stalking, the surveillance and the attacks against me, essentially under your orders, ever since you placed me on that surveillance and harassment list back in November 2011. And now, after over half a decade, I'm asking you to take the steps to reverse all these things, to have my name taken off the lists, have my name taken off the electromagnetic assault list, the human experimentation list, and what to me looks like the human extermination list. Just like with Dr. Bruno Kahl, I will continue making these public appeals to you personally, Mr. Andrew Parker, until the attacks against me stop. You are responsible for what the agents did to me on British soil after I tried to take your organization to court in the High Court. You are personally responsible for what your organization does on British soil, and I'm asking you to take steps to have the attacks against my family and against me stopped forever. And I'm also asking you to have that achieved without assassinations of my family members or myself. I should put in as a caveat. So in a sense, I'm asking to be left to live my life in peace. I have now been brutally microwaved. In the UK, just in October, as I was in Manchester, you have brutally microwaved my head. You have also continued an assault protocol with repeated shots to the back of my head on the left-hand side, which that morning started in my kitchen here in Switzerland. And it was continued from microwave guns placed in cars, and you shot into my head on pretty much exactly the same point, all the way as I was driving my car from the airport in London to Manchester. So your assault protocols interlink with the ones I've experienced in Switzerland and also the ones I've experienced in Germany. According to Katherine Horton, who is the acting general counsel of the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development, according to her, all secret service organizations are one big organization, just like the banks. In finance, one talks about the one bank now, publicly, and maybe in the world of intelligence, one should also just talk about the one secret service. However the situation may be, I'm still claiming that you are personally responsible for what your agents do on British soil. And therefore I'm asking you to cease and desist from attacking me ever again. I would like to be able to travel to the UK without fear of further mutilations. I would like to be able to visit my family, and I would like to be able to move freely about the UK and to stay at hotels at night without waking up like I woke up at the end of October with half my skull damaged from intense microwave irradiation throughout the night. I would like to be able to report crimes to the police as one should, without fear of humiliation, of being smeared with the old mental health card that is now entirely trite. The mental health card, Mr. Parker, does not work anymore simply because MI5, like other intelligence agencies, have now publicly assaulted so many victims that we have large statistics on them by now. These large statistics tell us that the vast majority of victims, according to some estimates 70% or even higher, are women. paranoia and schizophrenia, with which victims have been smeared in the past, actually affects 60% men. So 60% male sufferers of these mental health disorders against 70% female victims shows you that this has nothing to do with schizophrenia or paranoia, and it has all to do with sexual violence and war crimes. So just like Dr. Bruno Kahl, I'm asking you, Mr. Parker, to work with me and with the other whistleblowers to have your organization brought back under control, to have the systematic maiming and mutilation with microwave weapons, with nanotechnology, with forced infections, and all the many horrific things that your agents have now publicly committed in the past, brought under control, stopped for good, so that we can all return to the rule of law. And I'm really hoping that you will take my request seriously. So I thank you for your time now. I'm hoping I can travel back to the UK next time without being attacked. Meanwhile, I hope you also take measures that the assaults against me here in Switzerland and in Germany are stopped, because after all, it is your responsibility. You put me onto these assault lists first in the UK. It is because of your actions that I have been horrifically maimed, mistreated, abused, intimidated, assaulted. And I also had my business endeavor taken to pieces with the German-style Zersetzung. And also my family has been brought to the brink. My marriage, there was systematic steps taken, actually, by the way, in the UK, just a short while back, to have my marriage actively broken up. And I shall also put those things at your door. And I'm now asking you to uphold human rights, to actively uphold them in my case, and to also help me to have this criminality stopped against all the many other victims that we publicly know about in the UK. Thank you for listening.